I'm here with Derrick Scott III from the Florida Conference. Derrick, thanks for being with me today.
Oh, Ben, it's so good to be with you. Wish I could be in person with you. You're just good people. I was
Well,
hanging
thank
out with
you.
you, bro.
Thank you. For our viewers, Derrick and I have it's a new friendship, I think, and we finally met face to face for the first time at the Fresh Expressions Conference. 2 months ago now?
No, because we met. The first time we met actually was jurisdictional conference, and
But for so briefly, right?
It was a mutual friend was like, "Y'all should know each other." Like,
It's true.
cool. All right, I gotta go.
It's true. Derrick, you were busy, taking over, running the stage during the petitions and resolutions.
Yeah, no, we got to spend some actual quality time at the Fresh Expressions event, and that was cool.
Yeah.
That was super cool.
It was good. Derrick was the MC of the week. He rocked it. He had all kinds of they did every keynote. They did a panel afterwards, and Derrick moderated all those panels. He had some great questions, some great laughs. Also, I mean, the crowd work was phenomenal.
Trying.
Derrick, I just want to give you a minute to maybe introduce yourself, and we've gone down the resume a little bit in introducing you, but if you would just share, what are you passionate about, especially in your work in the Florida Conference?
Yeah. So my biggest passion is college-age young adults. I get to do a lot of really cool things, both for the church and a few things outside the church, but the thing that always sort of is like center for me is college-age young adults. I love emerging adults who are sort of disconnecting from their parents and the world that raised them and are embarking on being their own humans, figuring out their own path, whether that's a path that somebody's already charted out for them or something that they're going to figure out on their own. I love being a spiritual friend to that age group. I've been doing that work for 20 years. And I want to keep doing it. I'm not done. I'm not tired of it. And so all the other things that I do, and I don't talk about this part very often, but all of the other things that I do are usually in the service of supporting college-age young adults. And often I'll say that as a campus minister, I've got two main jobs. One is to prepare college-age young adults to find their place in the church and in the story of God. And also, my job as a campus minister is to prepare the church to be able to receive them.
Yeah.
That's this work of, doing a lot of institutional work, right? Like that's even the work that I do, getting ready for General Conference and supporting, that. Like, yes, there are all these things that are really, really important that are, in there, but for me, baseline, like, north is how does this impact the next generation? So also, and some people know this, I also work part-time at a craft brewery in Jacksonville. Yeah. Wow, we're talking super part-time at this point because I work a lot for the church. I also, and I think you probably would have said this, but I work for Texas Methodist Foundation part-time as well. But I'm like 4 shifts a year at this brewery, but I've been there for like a decade, and I used to work like once a week at least, if not twice, and now it's definitely not once a week. But these are my people. These are folks that they're not walking through anybody's churches anytime soon, but they have a spiritual hunger and a desire for conversation, and just want to be received as genuine human beings on their own journey. And there's a crossover there with campus ministry in many ways. Now, most of the folks I work with are not college-aged anymore, but there's a crossover in sort of mindsets and desires of what they're looking for from the church, from those who might want to influence them on a spiritual level, even as followers of Jesus. And so I'm going to stop talking about all of this, because this is the stuff I'm passionate about, and I could just talk about all day long and get deep into the weeds. But, college-age young adults, whether they are connected to church or not, that's the group that I am most passionate about. and everything else kind of gets situated around them. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and I think that's exactly the focus of this season of Rebrand, of the podcast, is all about looking at the ways that we are doing ministry, and a lot of times the ways that we're falling short, where we're living into old models of ministry that don't work, or we continue to create barriers for people to be a part of the church, or we sit in our castles and wait for them to come, and it's not working anymore. And we feel like a lot of times there aren't enough people saying, hey, this isn't working, we need to try something else. So thank you for being one of those people who says this isn't working, and you're already trying other things. You're trying new things, and a lot of that is working. I want to ask you, if you would, this is off script, but if you would talk just a little bit about Studio Wesley and what that looks like as a new way of reaching people, as a new way to do ministry.
Yeah. So Studio Wesley has been my specific work around campus ministry the last year and a half. It is essentially an online campus ministry that currently produces content for college-aged young adults, supporting them wherever they are. But the story of Studio Wesley really starts a few years back. I, along with a beautiful team of people, founded a Wesley Foundation in Northeast Florida called Campus City Wesley. And one of the things we said from the very beginning is we want to be where the students are. And students are online. Students are in social media apps and platforms. And so we're like, we got to be there. So quickly into that CCW, Campus City Wesley, kind of experiment, we started doing online ministry. We started with a blog site, and then really started going deep into Instagram. And so Studio Wesley sort of emerges out of all of that. And I was given the opportunity to spend the last year and a half really focused on that online ministry of Studio Wesley. But we've gone really, really slow. Like the first year, we really just sort of explored, what does it mean to be like truly a like media company? And not that we're like trying to be like crooked media or anything like that, but just the recognition that if we're going to do more than simply do a Zoom meeting and upload it to YouTube as is, like that means something for workflow. It means something for like specific expertise, things I know nothing about sometimes. And so what does it mean to be a media company alongside being a campus ministry? And so that was what we did for the first year. And we needed that whole year. We're still learning, but gosh, we needed that first year to just be focused on that, putting out podcasts, thinking about other platforms by which we, how we might gather people in community. And so this last sort of 6 to 8 months, we started an intern program, a pilot intern program with 5 interns who are in different parts of, well, actually the world, because one of them is currently in Copenhagen. And just really focused on those 5 interns, me being their campus minister, and then them helping us develop content. That's gone really, really well. And now we're experimenting with some other community groups and inviting some, young adults generally to gather in a space on Sundays for some devotion time and some, highs and lows, and then a little bit of learning time around some kind of scriptural concept. And we'll do more of that going into the summer. But for me, here's my kind of my heart for Studio Wesley. I'm not interested in trying to get as many students into a Zoom room as I can. That's a beautiful thing for some people. That's not where I'm at. I'm interested in connecting with individual students and coming alongside them on their journey of following Jesus, their spiritual journey. And so I'm just trying to think about how to create opportunities online to serve individual students. And some of that is like group time, right? But I'm not looking to have more than like 9 folks inside a Zoom room for a group, because the more you get beyond that, and you can't actually pay attention to individuals. So just a way of sort of describing this, again, we have both an intern meeting on Sundays, that's like 2 p.m., and then another community group at 3 p.m. with some general young adults from different parts of Florida. We do a bunch of things in that hour for both of them, but the most important time is the highs and lows, where the students just say, this is the high from the week, this is the low from the week. It's the one time that I'm like, I know y'all are multitasking. I know that some of you are sick of screen time. All good. The only time I need you to be like screen on, fully engaged is highs and lows. We set ourselves on the collect for that week. It's all good if you're not on screen for that. I'll give a little preach, in the middle there. Like you can go off screen, do whatever you gotta do. But highs and lows, because that's actually where we build the community. We build the community, and I'm watching these individual college students connect with each other in an online space, and that is a huge component. And so that's a lot of Studio Wesley. Studio Wesley is still becoming whatever it's going to be. We'll go into a new iteration over the next several months, and just due to some factors around us, but we're still doing the work. And so literally by the time we get to September of 2024, I may be talking about some other things around Studio Wesley, because that's just, I really wish I could tell people Studio that we're Wesley, always in beta mode, but that doesn't actually play as well as I wish it did. It just makes people think I'm not ready to ship, which is kind of it. But I love it.
I didn't think I was going to spend so much time on Studio Wesley, but I do want to ask another question here.
Yeah.
As you were maybe adapting the college ministry that you were already a part of, or trying to start something new,
and full,
this idea, I think about it from a conference level, this idea of resourcing a person to do TikTok, to pay someone a salary to do TikTok, or to just be filming videos on social media.
Right.
For many, that would be a hard sell. And it feels like there's, at least in our context, that would be an uphill battle for me to try to convince the people I need to convince, or to get the support that I need, so that I'm not just going it alone in the wilderness.
Yeah.
How has that been? Have you had to spend a lot of effort on convincing people, or on gathering support for this new concept that you're pursuing?
Yes. So let me start here. I have a saying. I have a lot of sayings, but one of them is, God will fund the dream that God wants to see. And I remind myself of that because of the next thing I'm going to say. But I just have to keep coming back to this place where this really is God's ministry. And there may be a day that God's like, that's been great, Derrick, and it's been fun, and we're going to go do something else now. And I just have to be okay with those moments. I'm a layperson, so I don't live in the appointive process. But I'm pouring my life out for the church, for sure. I'm investing so much of my own energy and resources, and some would even say that I'm a workaholic. It's because I'm passionate about this stuff. But I do have to come back to this place of like, God will fund the dream that God wants to see. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I know exactly what that dream is. And so I just have to come back to that, which leads me to the second piece. Absolutely, I've got to convince people. I have to convince people to let me have 2 years to try this thing. I'm going to need to convince them to let me keep going for a little bit more. I have to convince folks to fund us and to make donations. And that's just kind of a part of the deal. It's not my favorite part of the deal, but it's a part of the deal. And some of this is just how I'm wired as a person. I just try to not lose a lot of energy on the things that I can't change. And here's something I can't change. I have not met anybody who's ready to just write me the check and let me just like go. And if you're out there, we could do some stuff, okay? We could really do some stuff. But until she arrives with that check, then let me just, I have to do this work of telling our story, and I have to do this work of showing that Studio Wesley and campus ministry more broadly is good ground to invest in. And really trust that God's going to bring some partners alongside who that story, that conversation will resonate with. So it's hard. And I'll name this other piece. so often my work is not waiting for someone to come to me. I have to go to them. So I've got to put something in the conference's hands. I can't wait for the conference to ask for my report.
Sure.
Which, I hate it. And yet that's
Yeah.
it. That's the
Yeah.
work. Like, got to get out in front of them. So that's some of it too. Like, just really taking responsibility for this thing that God has placed in my hands. That may be more of like a layperson's way of thinking about it. Cause again, like, I'm employed by the Florida Conference, but I'm not in the appointive system. I mean, at any point, and I do have this thought in my brain that at any point the bishop's going to call me or some other person's going to call me. It's like, hey man, we've been thinking, and I'm sure you're good at other things. And as a layperson, I don't have guaranteed appointment, and so I do have to do this other work of sort of partnering with God in laying the foundation and the continuity of these ministries that I'm a part of. And I'm sure that clergy feel a similar way. But as a layperson without guaranteed appointment, and nobody, I'm just so we know, I think I'm good. I don't think anybody's wanting to let go of me yet. But yeah, I think that's a part of it. Yeah, I have to be on the ground telling the story, and yeah.
All right, this is the last Studio Wesley question.
It's all good.
Because we really do need to move on. But you mentioned reports and giving feedback to the conference, or so many of these. I mean, we talk about fresh expressions, right? And new forms of ministry, and new ways of doing ministry require new metrics and new ways to report and assess the successes of or the health of your ministry. So in your context, when you're engaging with people virtually, when you're focusing on going deep with individuals rather than attracting the masses, what do your metrics look like? What do your goals and deliverables look like, especially as far as maybe as conference oversight is concerned?
Yeah. And I don't know if these work for the institution, what I'm about to say. And I love the institution. I'm an institutionalist. I'm on record. I'm a part of the system. I represent the system. I'm even part of groups making decisions that look like, the system at work, for better, for worse. But for me, the metrics are, one of the shows that we do, is the primary show we do, is called Studio Wesley Annex. It's a weekly discussion of the lectionary text. I get 4 college-age young adults in a Zoom-like room, and each one is assigned one of the texts for that week. They talk about it a little bit, what they got out of it, and then the other 3 sort of respond like, here's what I got out of it, or here's what I heard you say, and then they just do that around the room. And y'all, college students talking to each other about text, talking to each other about scripture, and not me going in and saying, this is the right way to read it, or this is the right nope. Like college-age young adults doing their thing, handling the scriptures. We good. Everything else is gravy, because that's the stuff that actually builds spiritual capacity when they move to a city and they haven't found a church yet, or when they're going through something and they're going to need a quick word and know the pastor's on vacation, the pastor can't get it. That's the kind of stuff that builds spiritual capacity. And that's not stuff that you can, I know that there are groups that believe you can do that with like hundreds in a room. I just don't think that's possible. And so for me, that's a metric. How many students do I have actually being challenged and wrestling with scripture? That for me is a metric. Right now I've got, about 9, 10, if you look at all the people who are part of Studio Wesley Annex. In a year, I'm hoping to be closer to 20, right? And so that's what I'm trying to do. But that's a metric for me. Another metric for me, he's asking this question, which is harder because you can't really discern this at the front end. But who are young adults that we cannot afford to lose when they go to college? And somebody would say, none of them. We can't afford to lose any of them. Absolutely. And also, who are the ones that, like we see their call.
Yeah.
And here's what we know. We
Yep.
know that the student with the most supportive church and incredible clergy parents, with a solid biblical foundation, has worked at camp, gets to college, and within 2 months has no connection to the church. How do we hold on to them? And
Yeah.
I do think that online campus ministry becomes an opportunity. But again, like, I needed time to actually focus on it. So when it was just a part of this larger work that I was doing, it got 10% of my time because it was coming alongside all these other in-person and other campus ministry things. When I got this opportunity to be focused on the online ministry, there's so much that I discovered. And one of the things I discovered is that, yeah, you got to do weekly, you got to be in there weekly for the Zoom meeting. And there's certain components that really do matter. And you can't have a ton of people in the room if you want to like get one-on-one. And so I've learned all of that. And so now I'm asking that question: how do we stay connected to these individual students on their journey? It's still campus ministry. The medium is online. And so I'm hoping that next year I would have hopefully connected with more students through these community groups that we're going to offer and some other opportunities. And again, I'm hoping that the reason why I'm connected to that student is because a pastor or a parent or some leader said, oh yeah, we can't miss them. Like they can't go to university of whatever and then just like no longer have their faith. Like we need them. The church needs them. And again, I know that we would say that about everybody. And so let's go. Let's go. Let's get that intentional and write me a check so that I can think that. But those are metrics for me. Okay, so these are metrics that are individual. And I'm challenged to even think of my little local church that I'm a part of. The question, tell me the stories of the individuals in the congregation and how they are being encouraged on their journey, which is not just coming in and sitting in the pews and not just being signed up for a small group and not just serving on a board, but literally, what is the story of their journey with Jesus? Those are metrics that I'm actually quite interested in us transitioning to. And yeah, that's going to make it hard for us to think about things like return on investment. It's going to make it hard for us to ask questions like, how much money are we spending on every single person? And I'll just say maybe those business and corporate-like questions are not appropriate measurements. They might be appropriate for helping us expand our thinking, but I don't think Jesus ever wanted us to be a business as far as the movement is concerned. We might have businesses, but I don't know if that's really what you like. I just need y'all to be as efficient and, as a corporate 500 company. I just don't know if that's really it. So using those kinds of ideas, even when we start talking about professions of faith and baptisms, the numbers don't really tell the story. Like the numbers represent individuals, but that individual who just got baptized might have been baptized 3 other times in the last year. And that's an important detail. Like it's a really important detail that doesn't come through. And so I'm not sure, when we talk about metrics, I think we got to move more into story and narrative and individuals and less. And I love data. I love it. Give me a spreadsheet all day, every day. But I don't know if it's appropriate to measure discipleship that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this actually in our last episode. We talked about this, how the discipleship or, in Christianese, sanctification, onwards, onwards to perfection. Like these things, all of this language is process. It's journey. It's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's not a saved or going to hell. It's it's a process. And so to try to box that into a yes or no metric,
right.
You're missing 99% of what matters,
Yeah.
And maybe there are some metrics, maybe there are some ways that we can benchmark some of that process, right? Some different steps in that journey that we can document, and finding some new ways to describe, to document the narrative, the story, the individual that is being developed in Christ. That's the hard conversation that needs to be in the forefront. All right, so I think the rest of our conversation will look more at the denominational trends, the current state of our denomination, and how you maybe some of the things that you see are plaguing our denomination or holding us back, preventing us from doing healthy ministry, and then how do we move away from those into new strategies, new initiatives, or right? So first of all, where do you see our denomination stumbling? Where do you see us falling short? What's holding us back?
Whew.
Pick a couple. Not all of them.
I do think that some of us have been in our roles too long. I had a conversation with a bishop once. They were essentially saying we really should have term limits. And I'm not going to out that bishop because the conversation we were having was very specific. I just wonder how many of us in our roles have just we've not had a reason to innovate because we know exactly how to do the thing we're doing. And let me just say, it is so scary. So scary. It's one of the reasons I'm okay with not being in the appointive process.
Yeah.
I don't know what I do. It's so scary. But I also just wonder if some of the lack of new ideas that we seem to have and the ways that we just, seem to get stagnant in old forms is because the person leading the thing has been there for longer maybe than they should be. And I think this is documented. We do have a generation of folks who were raised to believe that, I'm going to get this one job, and this is the one job I'm always going to have. And so I'll do it till retirement.
Right.
And I'm working with a couple of generations of students that can barely imagine staying in the same job for more than 5 years, staying in the same city for more than 5 years. And I can even hear some of my clergy friends well, appointive process, I get, sent on the other side of the conference, but to serve a church. And I just wonder, maybe even the idea of lifelong calling to clergy orders is something that we need to look at. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I do think that that's one of our stumbling blocks.
I think I agree, but I think it's also this idea that for so many of our clergy or our denominational leaders, this used to work. I've seen this work.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, if it worked before, so I'm gonna keep doing that because I saw it work.
Oh my gosh. And maybe connected to it is this question. I just wonder how often our leaders ask this question, what's the new thing that God wants to do in my life? If mercies are new every morning, Isaiah, behold, I do a new thing. Do you not perceive it? It just seems like, especially as United Methodists, right? We believe in this journey of sanctification. We believe that we are always being led to new places of learning and discipleship. So hey, DS, what's the new thing that God's doing in your life? Hey, pastor who's been at the same church for 8 years, what's the new thing that God's doing in your life? This maybe leads me to another thing that I wonder it sometimes keeps us back from being all that I think God wants us to be as a denomination. I just wonder how many of us are actually like talking about our actual relationship with Jesus. You know what? So I asked my college students 2 questions. How's your soul? And what's the last thing you heard God say to you? And both are just, those 2 questions are an hour, in part because half the time I'm translating what I mean by these, because they're just very Christianese.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But some of this is also, I'm wanting them to make an assumption that there is this like ongoing relationship, movement, rhythm, discipleship, journey with Jesus. But they often look at their pastors and don't hear any of that. Like, they don't hear the last thing God said to their pastor. I've got some folks, like, definitely that I can hear saying it and like preaching it. But by and large, I know that I've got like friends who are really, really smart and know text, and colleagues who are, deep theology and understand what it means to be a United Methodist. But like, we'll have a beer and like talk about the real stuff. But like, when in the church conversation does the leader, even the lay leader, okay? When does the lay leader talk about, this is where I am today? It's not where I was last year. I've been on this journey with Jesus, and this is the thing that Jesus is challenging me with. And here's what's been really crazy. I think we've probably seen it the most around issues related to human sexuality, because people have had to therefore talk about the journey that they've been on. They've had to talk about the journey that God's taken them on towards an inclusive theology. I think that may be the closest we've come to it. But I just wonder if we're really, I know this is one of the things my students struggle with. They just hear religious corporate speak. They don't hear a lot of,
Why should I care? Why does it matter? What's the effect right now?
Yeah. And we preach this stuff really well. We just don't talk about how it's actually happening in our own lives.
We teach it well.
Yeah. Like, I mean, everybody's got I was in traffic and I got really angry and the Holy Spirit was like, hey, chill out. Yeah. But like, really, like the other stuff, like, how's the Holy Spirit like growing you up in your emotional life?
Yeah. Well, so I want to push on to this next episode that we're producing is Tokenism to Inclusion.
Yeah.
So in the way we've been talking about it, in the pursuit of full inclusion or reflecting the diversity of the kingdom accurately in our ministry, we have come a distance away from exclusion, from blatant segregation, both racially, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender, age, like across all of these things, right? I think when we talk about inclusion and diversity, so much of it can be across these different challenges, right? We don't need to talk about one at a time.
Right.
But so for us in this conversation, we're talking about how I believe that we have made some real progress in the pursuit of diversity. But I see now we are in an age or a season of tokenism, where we have sometimes legislation, sometimes resolutions, sometimes, group decision that if we have 10 people in a room, 2 of them need to be people of color. And, we need to check that list. We need to check that box on the list. And there are some benefits to those systems, those structures, but certainly that's not enough. And sometimes that holds us back from further inclusion. Or more authentic inclusion. So my first question is, this language of tokenism as maybe a stepping stone, is that language that you use or that you would agree with, or is there a different way that you talk about the pursuit of inclusion that we are working towards in the United Methodist Church?
Ben, I don't I don't use the term token very often because I'm often it. I'm often the first and or only Black person in that space, the first and
Yeah.
or only single person in their 40s in that space, so first and or only queer person, first and or only lay person.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, that is, as you said, it is the stepping stone, in a sense of going into it. You're gonna have to have your first. You're
Yeah.
gonna have to. You're gonna have to end. But I think the thing that we have to remember is that one, and you already have said much of this implicitly, but one, like, there can't be just one. Like, I'm a layperson who's been in campus ministry for 20 years, so I guess I can, of many things I guess I can do, I can preach. Clearly, I'm not the only layperson that can preach. Clearly, like, that would be ridiculous to think.
Yeah.
So the question is, like, where do we find the other lay people who preach? And maybe we don't have systems in place to actually, like, locate them and bring them into a space.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we need to think about those systems. Like, our system's designed to get the results that it's getting. Like, so if we don't like those results, we don't like it that we only know one lay person that knows how to preach. Maybe, and I think you hear what I'm saying. Like, we just don't stop there.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I would invite my allies, particularly my white allies in this conversation, my straight allies in this conversation, my clergy allies in this conversation, all of the allies. I invite you to hold the grief of not being there yet lightly. And I wonder if sometimes, like, when we have this conversation about tokenism and just the idea that, like, oh gosh, we have a token, that's what we've done. Like, we've tokenized this one person. And so then it creates this, like, guilt, shame spiral often in our allies. And I just want to invite you to not go there and use tools to not go there, because that actually is going to block us taking another step. You're going to have a token because we're getting started in this work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's work that keeps going. And so what we got to do is build capacity to know that, like, this is not a 4-year project, it's a 40-year project.
Yep.
All of this inclusion work is not going to be done for us as United Methodist General Conference. By no means, by no stretch of the imagination, right? Like, so we've got to build the kind of capacity which is available to us, especially as United Methodists, who totally believe that God is always taking us on a journey, to be open to the fact that, yes, there are more queer folk. And we've got to build systems and patterns and openness. And we've got to make sure that when a queer person walks into the room, that they feel welcomed, which means that we have seasons of centering the needs of those who've not been there. It doesn't mean that you'll always center those needs. It's just when you've, for 40, 60, 100 years, not, like, just completely ignored their existence, the only way that you're able to actually make significant changes is by centering those needs for a season or two. And I don't know how long those seasons are, just for the record. So Malcolm Gladwell did one of his early revisionist history podcasts was on the glass ceiling of female leaders, and the way that, like, once a group gets their first female leader or their first minority leader, they just sort of stop. And the ways, because it makes us feel like we've done the work. We've not done the work. Like, having one is not the work. And so we have to absorb that and keep working. There can't just be one Black person who is able to be an Episcopal leader. There isn't just one woman who can be a pastor and a district superintendent. Like, we have to keep going and just know that that's actually a part of the work. And then tokenism really is just a point on the map and not a problem to solve.
Yeah. I think about, especially, like, we just went through the nominations process here in Holston. And so this topic is especially present from a structural standpoint, just because we've been in it right now. And I think the way I keep telling myself, maybe we can combat this this trend, or maybe a better way is, while we are in this stepping stone season of tokenism, a way that we can try to be as healthy as possible during that time is to look at the people who have been willing to fill that spot, to be that token. How about we look at them as people, right? Like actually be in relationship with those people, with those individuals, so that I don't see you as the Black person on the committee. I don't see you as the lay person on the committee. I see you as a person who I am in relationship with, who has a different perspective than I do, which will make our group more thoughtful and holistic in the way that we do our work, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think looking at the value in diversity of thought and experience, especially when we're forming groups and committees to do the work of the church, diversity is not something to check off a list, right? The work that your group does will be better for having diversity in the room, right?
Right. Well,
and
because
so
it's reality.
Yeah.
It's reality. And again, this is the hard work. Like, it's this fine line of not simply bringing people into the room because they fit a category. And we need to make sure that perspectives are in the room. And so I think it's hard. I think that's hard. Like, I think it's hard to say we need to make sure that the Latino, Latinx perspectives in the room, but let's not count how many seats. I think that's a really hard thing. And so I think we live in that hard thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're having conversation with someone who isn't in it, who's not a part of the process, maybe they're just a local church member who isn't familiar with denominational structure, leadership, how would you talk to them about the state of diversity and inclusion in our denomination?
Yeah, I would say to them that we are on our journey, that we are not where we should be, but we're definitely not where we used to be. And that there's so much that we've learned, and we've so much more to learn. And some of what we need to learn is what the conversation I'm having at that moment is going to do for me. And I receive that as a part of that journey, that, if the board or committee that we're talking about specifically, or the initiative, made a mistake, let's own the mistake, and let's take that feedback as part of the journey. It's not saying that we failed. It's saying that we still had things to learn. And so that's what I would say. Now, I'm also predisposed to do that, just for the record, because I do see so much of what's happening. I mean, I really think that where we are right now as the United Methodist Church is a part of our continued growth and movement towards perfection as a denomination. I don't simply see it as a group of folks could no longer be a part of us because some new people were now coming into leadership. And I mean, that is what happened. But for me, this is, broadly speaking, the denomination continuing to grow up, which comes with pain and comes with loss, but also comes with learning and expansion and evolution as well. And so that's what I would say. And here's my hope. My hope is that we would, as a denomination or as a committee, board, whatever, actually be about that. That it's not just Derrick, putting a glossy kind of, kind of perspective on it, just me trying to be positive. No, that we were all actually committed to being on this journey together as a board, a committee, a denomination.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we try to give, for every episode, we try to give the rebranders we try to break this down on an individual, on a congregational, and on a denominational level. So what are some action steps, some ways that we can engage with whatever our topic is on those three levels? So my question to you is, how can individuals or congregations, how can they engage in these next steps that we have pursuing a more diverse kingdom?
Yeah. I hope that your rebranders are developing deep relationships with people not like them, with no outcome or destination to what those should end up looking like. And I hope that if they're like, yeah, I have a friend that is not like me, I hope that you'll receive the invitation to maybe pursue another friend this Eastertide. I hope that those listening would see the work of inclusion as a work of building the beloved community that is actually more about seeing the humanity in everyone, which means we see the diversity that those humans bring. Colorblindness is not actually as humane as some may believe that it is. So I hope that we would see this work. Yes, there's politics. Yes, there's policies. Yes, there's labels and things like that. But I just hope that those listening would see the work of inclusion as the work of really sort of being embraced, and embracing people not like them. And I hope that they would consider that to be a 5, 10, 20-year project.
Yeah. All right, now at the congregational level, what needs to happen for congregations to be a part of this work?
Yeah. I hope that congregations are paying attention to the people who live, work, and play in the communities that they're in. My deep belief as a lay person and a lay leader in a local church is that our responsibility is to hold the Wesleyan witness for the sake of that community, that we exist for that community. And so I do hope that my friends listening, congregations listening, would ask that question: who are the people who live, work, and play in the community that our congregation is in? And how do we take a kind of spiritual responsibility? And I don't mean spiritual responsibility like go get them saved. It's actually God who does the saving, and he uses our witness to do that. My hope is that they would be more interested in asking the question, how do the people who live, work, and play in our community feel about us? Do they think we like them? Do they think that we would want them in our church? Do they think we actually care about their real lives? And I specifically want us to ask those questions around the folks that we would like to, that we wish were not in our community. The folks that we wish that we would find a reason to not say they're in our community. Sometimes that is unhoused individuals around our buildings. Sometimes that's people who are from a different cultural or ethnic, racial background around our building, where we say things like, well, that's not really our part of town, or they don't really live here. I hope that we'll pay attention to that, the people specifically that we don't actually want to count as part of our community, because I think they really are. And I think that if we could begin to do some of that work, again, we exist for them. And so it really is about how they feel about us. And let's do the hard work of being a kind of space that they would want to be in, being the kind of people they would want to connect with.
All right. And then the last question is, what needs to happen denominationally to remove barriers or to engage more fully in this work?
Yeah, yeah. I think at the denominational level, our policies matter, and that's why we're doing this work. Wanting to make some changes to the Book of Discipline. But I think it's helpful for us at that level. Those of us at the policy level, those of us at the conference level, to remind ourselves that we actually exist for the folks on the ground. That our work is for them. They aren't doing us a favor. I mean, and this is how I feel about conference work. And I'm an employee of the conference, but our local churches aren't doing us the favor of being vibrant and being communities that people actually want to be a part of. They're not doing. That's not for. How are we serving them in doing that? How are we helping them do that? And that really is a mindset shift, because I know a lot of folks at sort of the institutional level would say, we don't think that they're doing us any favor. We should ask them, does the system exist for me, or do I exist for the system? And let's really take that in. And so I do think that policies matter. And I think that those of us at the institutional level of this denomination just need to continue to ask the question, am I actually serving these people? Do they feel served by me? And that's the question that I, as even a General Conference delegate, am asking. Do people feel served by what I'm doing at General Conference? Or is there a huge gap of distance? And I think that if we could have that kind of institutional humility about our work, I think that would be super helpful for folks.
All right. I think I asked you this when we were in Charlotte, but I try to ask this of everyone who I have this kind of conversation with, or specifically who I film with. What gives you hope with all of this conversation that we've been having, all of the work that we're doing in churches at the denominational level, which can be discouraging oftentimes. In spite of all of that, where do you get hope?
Yeah, I get hope because in my small progressive congregation that I'm a part of here in Jacksonville, San Marco Church, most Sundays I am one of the oldest people participating in worship. Now, people in the room are and let me say participating in worship leadership. People in the room, there's a diversity of ages definitely in the room. But as far as who's on stage and who's in the sound booth, I'm definitely on the older side. And I think it's just quite incredible. I mean, definitely, we're not necessarily hitting the membership and attendee metrics, and I get that. But gosh, man, what does it mean for 60-70% of the folks making a Sunday morning happen are under the age of 30? What is that to me? And why would they come to our church, our little progressive, congregation, where there are these, hip, cool bells and whistles and, lights and stages, churches all over Jacksonville. They're in our little local church. And gosh, if that's a picture of the future of the denomination, I'm so here for that. Now, I'll just say, I know that's not everybody's reality as far as church, and there's some specific reasons why it is the way that it is at San Marco Church in Jacksonville. But gosh, they didn't have to show up for service yesterday. Yes, they were asked to. Planning Center told them they were supposed to be there, at 9, but they didn't have to, and they did.
Yeah.
And gosh, if they can show up, I can too.
Amen. That's good. Well, Derrick, it's been such a blast, and such an encouragement to talk with you for the last hour and a half now.
Well, man, it's been fun, Ben. I'm grateful for you. I mean, you're one of the people that give me hope. I mean, you're still in this thing. Why? I don't completely know, other than this is what we're doing. This is where we are. So you are a
Yeah.
person. You are a person that continues to give me hope for our church.
Well, thank you. Maybe if enough of us are fill that role for each other, then we might, we might stay in it. So,
Love it. Love it. Love it.
all right.